Well, hello there again, City Church family. We are in day 23 of the Devotional, and the text for today is Luke chapter 23, verse number 43. I'm trusting that you've read that already, and if you haven't, push the pause button in this video, and then I'd actually recommend that you go back to verse number 39, because if you do that, you're going to have a much better understanding of the text. Some of the one sentences that we've read did make sense on their own. This one actually not so much. So you'll notice as you read that there's a request by a thief that's nailed on the cross next to Jesus, and he makes the request that Jesus would invite him into paradise. And so traditionally, that thief is known as the good thief, which kind of sounds like an oxymoron, but he's the good thief, and he's the one that makes this request. And there's some kind of extra biblical literature that says that his name is Dismas, but there's no biblical proof of that. But you've got this guy who is looking towards Jesus and makes this request that Jesus would usher him into, or take Jesus with him into paradise.
All four of the Gospels tell us that Jesus is crucified between two other people. Matthew and Mark use a word for those people, which is leistes. The word that's used here in Greek is a word kakurgos. Kakurgos means literally doer of bad things or doer of evil. So they're criminals, might be the translation you have, but Matthew and Mark tell us that they are leistes. Their crime is that they are thieves. Now, we've talked about this before, but it's really worth repeating again, that the word thief, leistes, is actually used in this period of history to refer to rebels, to people that incite and participate in insurrections against Rome. It's important for the background to the Bible to know that there was a massive Jewish insurrection that had taken place within 100 years before Jesus. And so all of that is really, and the way in which Rome punished those people was crucifying them. So that's all kind of in the background of what Luke is thinking about when he's writing this down. Here again, you have Jesus hung between two rebels under the sign, Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews. We're doing the kingdom thing again.
So again, I think it's important to emphasize as deeply as we can that some of us, myself included, have come to believe that crucifixion was really just for those rebels, those types of people. And there's a current Jewish Christian, his name is Marty Solomon, and he's the one that brought that to our attention, where he was referencing how this word extra biblically, which means outside of the Bible in the literature of the day in the time of Jesus, really uses that word towards rebel or terrorist, someone who's doing guerrilla warfare against the Roman Empire. And here Jesus is suffering a similar punishment to them.
And I think if you have a couple extra hours in your day and you're looking for other things to watch, we would really suggest the Bema, B-E-M-A, the Bema podcast, which is Marty Solomon's podcast.
Correct.
But if you've been following these video devotionals, you'll note that yesterday and today, we have these two stories of incredible kindness from the cross. Yesterday, Jesus looks at the crowd that's crucifying him, and he prays aloud, "Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing." But today we have this leistes, this rebel, who looks at Jesus and says, "Remember me when you come into your kingdom." And Jesus says to him, "Surely today you will be with me in paradise." And I wonder if these are put so close together as an invitation from Luke to gain confidence that Jesus is always willing to receive us. So yesterday we talked about a group of people who unwittingly are doing they don't know what they're
following
doing.
Orders.
They don't know how bad the
Jesus.
thing is that they don't see it all, and Jesus forgives them. And now Jesus is hanging next to somebody who knows exactly what he's doing. He's a criminal. He's a kakurgos. And Jesus is also willing to forgive him. And so all of us live lives where we sin knowingly and unknowingly. We harm people consciously and unconsciously. But the crucified Jesus is willing to receive everybody, regardless of what they know or don't know they've done.
And in line with that, I think it's interesting to note, Peter, that he says, take me today into your kingdom. He's essentially acknowledging that Jesus is the king. where he's being crucified for that. This guy recognizes Jesus as the king of a kingdom, and he requests that Jesus would receive him into that, which is very powerful. I think when we talk about putting feet to our faith, and that real sense here at City where we ask everyone to follow the call to follow Jesus and to serve others, for me personally, I can never get away of the theater of this event. And so what you have is you have Jesus who's in the middle. He is innocent. He is truly the king of this new spiritual kingdom that he's ushering into the world. On either side of him are two people who are extremely guilty. Now, if you were to read the text, you'd discover that one of them leans into Jesus and basically asks him to take him with him into paradise. And the other one is cursing Jesus, and he is in some ways even joining in with the crowd and mocking Jesus. And for me, here's where the theater is. We are called as people who read these texts to stand in front of this gospel story and ask ourselves, which one are we going to agree with? Are we going to look at Jesus and are we going to deny him and mock him like the one terrorist or criminal or rebel or thief? Or are we going to be like the other one where we lean into Jesus and we recognize him for who he is and we make that amazing choice to follow him? And so I think that if we were to talk about a practical, pastoral, put feet to your faith, I think that this story calls us to the foot of the cross where we make the decision for ourselves. Which one of these two thieves do I agree with, and which one will I kind of follow through with in my view of Jesus? Well, God bless you, and we look forward to seeing you again tomorrow on our next devotional.